We're back on the Morgan Streetman Show. Lots to get ready for as far as the election goes, to think about what's going to happen in November. And we have a better eye now that we know who the vice president is.
Going to be, right? You mean the president, right? Because you don't think Joe Biden's actually going to be president, right? I mean, he's more than happy to let the American people judge his physical and mental proposal. Can't say it. Physical and mental fitness.
If
right?
they even let him talk.
They can't. They won't let him talk. He's not allowed out of his basement. He never takes questions. We got some clips from that. Anyway, as you probably already know, last week he picked Kamala Harris to be his vice presidential candidate. I was a little surprised by that pick for a number of reasons, not the least of which is she's not a very good candidate. What in the world was that? It's a ghost in the machine. Did you hear that?
That's a computer warming up for whatever you have coming up.
Getting ready.
Okay. Well, it isn't me. I've only got paper in front of me today. All right. So some interesting things came out, though, last week, and something that's automatically being, lambasted in the media in a way that really irritates a guy like me, because I don't like this when you're not allowed to ask questions about stuff, if you notice that. I don't like that. You can't tell me, you can't draw out lines and tell me, Morgan, you can only think within these lines. You think outside of these lines, that's what's called wrong think. And you keep thinking that way, we're going to have to send you for re-education, because obviously it didn't stick the first time. I don't like that. In fact, you tell me not to think outside of a line, that's the first place my mind is going to go, is outside that box that you're trying to plug me into. Well, an op-ed came out almost as soon as Kamala Harris was announced as the VP pick, questioning whether or not she's actually eligible for the position. Oh, my gosh. Are we allowed to do that? Are we allowed to see if somebody meets the standards in the Constitution for the position? Apparently not. That's racist. Okay. But the question was, is she truly a natural-born citizen? Because the Constitution requires that a person who is going to be the president, which would include somebody who's going to be the vice president, because they might have to step in, and in Joe Biden's case, they might have to step in right away. You have to be a natural-born citizen. Now, that term's not defined in the Constitution, as many people know, because we had a similar discussion with President Obama's eligibility. And, of course, it was racist then, too, to even ask. I mean, there's only a few things the Constitution requires of the president. It's only three things, and we're not allowed to ask if you meet those three things. But let's keep on the natural-born citizen line, because that's one of the three. The 14th Amendment defines it as all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So an op-ed came out last week written by Chapman University professor of law John Eastman, who's also with the Claremont Institute, kind of a think tank. And he basically said, look, when you read that line, all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, if it's just all persons born in the United States, which is kind of the modern way of defining a natural-born citizen, well, you were born here. That's it. That's all you need. Then you don't need the and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. You don't need that phrase, but you can't interpret legal texts by just ignoring a part of it. So that has to have some degree of meaning, or it wouldn't have been included in the 14th Amendment. So it's not just you're born in the U.S., as we want to say today. And this is a relatively new development, by the way, that is the only criteria. But it's also that you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And being subject to the jurisdiction thereof would require your parents to be citizens. So you have to be a citizen child born in the USA to citizen parents. And apparently we're not sure if Kamala Harris, and we think they probably weren't. One was a citizen of Jamaica. One was a citizen of India. And so she's not technically subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. She could have gone back to Jamaica, become a Jamaican citizen. She could have gone to India, become an Indian citizen. But she wasn't a natural-born citizen in the United States. Now, that's what Professor John Eastman says. To me, it's worth reading his op-ed only because of the furor that has come up after the fact. And they put these editor's notes on it. You ought to read this stuff. You ought to read some of this stuff. It says, this is the editor's note. Newsweek ran the op-ed, right, which they now probably think was ill-advised because of the backlash they're receiving. So now they've got to slap an editor's note on it saying, this op-ed is being used by some as a tool to perpetuate racism and xenophobia. We apologize. The essay by John Eastman was intended to explore a minority legal argument about the definition of who is a natural-born citizen in the United States. But to many readers, the essay inevitably conveyed the ugly message that Senator Kamala Harris, a woman of color and the child of immigrants, was somehow not truly American. Wrong. That's so wrong. It goes on. There's more to this crappy note they slapped on the front of this thing. But when they're pushing you that hard to try to not believe something, you need to at least think about that. Whatever it is they're trying to scare you off of there, you need to at least think about it. And I'm not convinced that she's not eligible. I think there's a question to be explored, just like there was a question to be explored with John McCain.
I think this just goes to the fact that so many times now in journalism, not only are they going to write the piece, but they're also going to tell you how you need to interpret it.
Right.
Because you're too stupid to figure it out the way that they intend for you to, or B, because they want to control you and control the way that you think.
Right. Well, just give me some droog, some of that milk with the drugs in it, and I'll be fine here. I'll get back out to protesting and rioting. Well, all right, so there's questions about her eligibility, and now if there's one thing that Kamala Harris cannot handle, it's questions. I don't know if you remember that from her campaign where she was trying to run for president. And she would get confronted in public, and she'd be unprepared for any kind of attack from somebody. Now, I don't mean like a physical attack. I just mean asking her a tough question. She can't handle it. She's demonstrated that ability. In fact, when she was picked, I told some friends of mine, I said, well, the chances of Trump winning, I think, are just basically this sealed the deal. Because not only is Kamala Harris completely unlikable as a person, as a candidate, not only is she a complete phony in her story, her entire history is phony. I mean, it's real, but the way she tries to portray herself is phony. That's what I'm saying. If you actually look at her actual history, she is not as she portrays. But in addition to all that, I mean, she's just a really person who cannot handle the high-intensity game of politics live, which is what we're playing now. With cameras everywhere and people coming up to you everywhere, you've got to be fast on your feet. You got to be ready for the questions. You got to be able to deflect. You got to be able to dodge. You got to be able to counterpunch. All these things, you got to be able to do it all, and you got to be ready to do it anywhere at any time because of the culture that we have today with technology and cameras and video phones. So she's not ready. She's clearly not ready to do that. And we had multiple examples from her running for president where she couldn't handle tough questions. We got more examples for you today. Now, I had a clip for you, Pat George, if you're ready to go. I want to play this because Kamala and Joe have been holding press conferences, except for they're not actually press conferences. They're speeches, and they don't take questions afterward. They can't take questions. So we got a little clip from the end of one of their press conferences, and listen to the way the handlers just herd the media out of the room.
Thank you. Come on, guys. Senator. Thank you, guys. Come on, you guys. Come on, let's go. Come on. Thank you.
Let's go.
Come on, guys. Thank you.
Come on. Thank you.
Come on, guys. Let's go.
Come on, let's go. Get out of here.
Okay, come on.
I mean, listen to that. They're herding the media out of the room, and the media's complying. I mean, what a bunch of Can you imagine if this was a President Trump press conference? These people would be like, no, you're not getting me out of the room. I have the right to ask the president questions, et cetera, et cetera. And they'd be going off on that. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard. And if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.